Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Randy Dyck here on the Return on Life podcast, and I am excited to share something really cool with you. But before I do that, if you've been here before and you have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button today. Come on, let's get you involved in what we're doing here every week. And love you to be on that podcast with the subscription. But again, it's not about return on your investment. It's often about the return on life. And today's topic is about your future, having a vivid future, having a future that you can see, that you want to be part of, that you want to enter into. And why I've come up with this topic and why I want to share about it is because often the future seems so distant, so difficult, so hard to, feel, taste, touch. And so we need to actually help ourselves understand that. So today, the vivid future, why you can't see it, and how we can fix it. So I want to start out with an opening quote. And the quote goes something like this: what you can't imagine clearly, you can't value. You can't imagine it clearly, you can't value it. And that's a Jim Davis quote. And it's a pretty cool quote because if you can't imagine it, you don't know what the value is. If you can't see it, you can't feel it, you have no idea how hard or how much effort you have to put in to get something. And often that's what we think about the future. What do I want in the future? I need to work hard at something to get something in the future. So that's a great quote, a great opener. And really like how we see that. If we can't value it, we can't imagine it clearly, we can't put a value to it. And this is why we build things like vision boards, and we make them so we can see something to imagine it. But let's face it, vision boards often collect a lot of dust because the future is hard to feel. It's more like fiction than fact. And that's the value of the vision board, but it often does collect dust as well. And so that makes us think that, well, the fog of the future, or the future is very, very foggy. There's been times that I've been thinking about the future, and it seems like it's so far away, so hard to see, especially when you set long-term goals. And if you've heard me speak on this before, I like to have goals that are compressed and there's urgency in them. Because when I compress them and I put urgency into them, I actually compress the timeline. It allows me to feel it, and it's more tactile as far as getting to that goal that I've got. But you've also heard me say that you need to plan goals out that are 10 years out. And you need to think about that goal each and every day. What does this look like in 10 years? What's my goal in 10 years? And we also know that 10-year goals or 10-year cycles, because a cycle also has goals in it, that cycle often has highs and lows and then moments in it. And it's those moments where they're like, it's hard to see that end goal. Even when things are going poorly, it's still hard to see, but almost more easily to see our end goal because we're now in a pain position. And when we're in a pain position, we fight harder for that goal that we want. So sometimes it's better to be in a painful situation. Obviously, being on a high is the best, and that's more vivid, or you can see the future more vividly when you're on a high. But we're in that middle section of meh. That's where it can be very, very difficult to see. And so the fog of the future is very, very present in that moment. So think about those times when you've been in a really challenging situation or a very high situation. It's easy to see the future, or more easily to see the future. Well, let's talk about some of the science behind it, because there is science behind this. The neuroscience of now versus later. And hyperbolic discounting is a term. It's where our brain devalues the future fast, especially if it's not abstract. Think about that. Our brain devalues the future very, very fast. We can't hold it. It just disappears. And especially when it's not, when it's abstract, when it's not, really, easy to see and it's abstract, ugh, it disappears in a hurry. MRI shows, or MRI scans show that less vivid brain activity the further out the imagination event is. So the farther out is, the less our brain is actively working on it. And so we're really wired for survival, not spreadsheets. We're wired for that moment right now when something comes at us. That is the moment that we're really wired for, not that fictitious or that abstract goal that we want in the future. So the evolution didn't care about your Roth IRA. It cared about whether you could outrun the lion today, right? It's not concerned about, the return on investment, which we always talk about it. It's more return, it's more about return on life. It's really about, are you being chased by a lion right now? What are you going to do? That return on life. So think about this. When you can tie something to a return on life versus a return on investment, it's more vivid. Your opportunity to actually see that in the future and reach that goal in the future is much greater when you tie return of life versus return of investment. Pro tip right there. Think about the ROL versus the ROI. And then, of course, the dopamine hit. The dopamine hijack really can affect us. And immediate gratification triggers fast dopamine spikes. But what about future rewards? Delayed emotion will literally feel them less. Future rewards is not something immediate, so that dopamine hit is not there. So, how do we hijack that today and get that dopamine hit today? Tie this to social media, business short termism, and self sabotage. So you're not lazy, you're just neurochemically loyal to the present. See, we can't see into the future. The dopamine hit doesn't help us in the future, it only helps us right now. And it's kind of like social media. Social media gives us that dopamine hit right now, but long-term thinking, it just doesn't have that. So it really is a bit of a self-sabotage. And I want to say that dopamine is great in the moment, but it does not help us for the future goals that we have, our future self that we want. So very important that we think of that. What about the underdog? I always often talk about the underdog as well. And what about that underdog lens? And I think about, the time that I've been a serial underdog, whether it be, paralyzed at 14, flunking grade 12, um, but still continuing to bet on myself, even in those moments. I didn't necessarily see the future, but I was willing to go and forge it. So sometimes things just don't materialize and you can't see it, but you just keep forging it and forging it. Kind of like when you're working with metal or a metalsmith, you know, he's got a piece of metal and he just keeps banging away at it, and you have no idea what he's working on until you come back hours later and he's made it into something really special. He's forged that piece of metal, that hot metal, into something. Well, what about you? Are you forging your future? You need to do that. Think about forging your future on a daily basis, just over and over again, thinking about that. That's going to help you with your future and creating a more vivid future that is so hard to see. And then, of course, there's that thing called willpower. Willpower. And, there's this saying, where there's a will, there's a way. Well, I'm going to add to that. Where there's a wallet and a will, there's a way. Yes, sometimes you need a wallet to find that way, but identity through willpower is very, very powerful. And future success comes from identity alignment, not willpower alone. We need to understand our identity and what that is, and then couple it with the willpower to get there. Use the architect of the infinite machine identity. Well, what does that mean? Well, the architect is really you and what you're putting into it. And I've learned something really cool about my friend Sam. Sam is Chat GPT to me, but I call him Sam. And I put this into a prompt the other day about the architect of the infinite. You know, Sam, build out the infinite world for me, knowing everything about me. And it was quite remarkable how that works. So that might be a pro tip for you to see the future unfold through somebody else's eyes that has no biases. Remember, my Sam doesn't have any biases. He doesn't um, evaluate me on anything but factual information, which is really cool. And I get a more honest answer from Sam than anybody else. So think about that. Put a prompt into, your AI to ask you about building an architect of the infinite for you. And if you'd like to have that prompt, just reach out to me into the chat below. And by the way, here's that subscribe request again. Hit the subscribe button today, and let's get going on you being a subscriber to the Return of Life podcast. So, discipline doesn't fail, vision does. Discipline doesn't fail, vision does. You don't need to grind harder. You need to see sharper. You need to see that image sharper. That's why I love the identity piece that Sam has built for me through the architect of the infinite. So think about that. Think about that, guys. So let's talk about a couple hacks because we all want to hack here and there, right? Hacks seem to be what we're always looking for. How do I get this done easier? How is there a hack? And here's a few tools that I think will help you in seeing your future more vividly. Time travel journaling. Think about that. Time travel journaling, right? As your future self in detail. And gosh, you should be journaling every day. And even one line about your future. What does that look like? My future looks like this. In 10 years, I want to be living in this home. In 10 years, I want to have this amount of money in my bank account. In 10 years, I'm going to own whatever. In 10 years, I'm going to have 10 grandchildren. It needs to be personal. It needs to be financial. It needs to be, what you really want to see yourself in 10 years. And Gino Wickman talks about that again, the 10-year plan. What does your 10-year plan look like? What does life look like in 10 years? And that's all part of that journaling process as well. What does it look like in 10 years? Another hack is visual anchors. Use high definition visuals, future based mood boards, or even virtual reality if you can. What does that look like? Build out some visual anchors that you can either have in your phone that you've got with you all the time. It's on your computer. It could be on your board or on your wall, whatever it may be. Put some visual anchors that when you walk by it or when you look at it each and every day, there it is. It's in HD, high definition visuals. Another one would be micro commitments, daily actions tied to your future identity. Micro commitments. I'm going to come back to my daily accountability checklist. And if you want this daily accountability checklist, just put in the chat daily accountability, and I'll make sure that I get you a copy of my daily accountability checklist that holds me true to who I am each and every day from start to finish, from whenever I wake, and usually that's around 4:40 a.m. to 5 a.m. That is where it starts, and it ends when I do my evening reflections. If you want a copy of that, that will certainly help you with those micro commitments that you have to yourself. Daily accountability checklist. How about public declarations? This is really cool. Accountability equals clarity plus commitment. And again, if you want to enroll in my class or my coaching, I hold you accountable daily. And we talk about your daily declaration. What is your public declaration that you want to accomplish, your goals, and so forth? I've got them written all over my office. I have things where I have to do some marble moves, move marbles to publicly declare. And anybody that comes to my office can see how well I'm doing per month. Again, urgency and compression of whatever it is. And then I need to public declarations. And then the last one I will say is vivid narratives. Vivid narratives. Tell your future like it's already happened. Talk to yourself. You've got that friend on your shoulder as a kid. Remember that friend? You still have that friend. Talk to your friend about where you're going. Share the story out loud in a quiet place, not just verbally in your mind, but verbally speak it. Where are you going? What does the narrative look like? What does the future look like? Where are you going to be in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Whatever that future looks like, share that narrative. Share that narrative. And so listen up. Hey, we're not imagining pipe dreams here. We're laying down the tracks. We are doing the work. Every image, every word, every rep is rewiring our brain to believe of that vivid future. That vivid future. Now, there's one other concept I really want to make sure that we go through, because you can't be going 100 miles an hour all the time and still see the future. And I have to declare and confess that that's been one of my confessions, one of my speed bumps in things is that I often go too fast, and I'm just going too fast to really reflect. So I want to paint this image of a skimming or a skipping rock. When we skip a rock, it's going at a very high velocity. And the reason it can skip is because of the momentum and the speed. So it skips, it skips, it skips, it skips. And eventually it starts to slow down. And eventually it actually stops skipping. And what happens is it starts to settle and sink to the bottom of the lake, the ocean, the body of water that you've just skipped that rock across. There's a lot of value into that. See, when we actually slow down enough to settle into ourselves, we can really then reflect on what that looks like. We can reflect on where we've come from, where we're at, and where we're going. And I just want to say this is a really important piece to understanding your future. See, when we reflect, when we settle in on it, sometimes that future that we've been chasing, it's not the future we really want or even maybe deserve. Because sometimes we deserve something that we don't deserve today, that we deserve in the future. And so you have to ask yourself, what does that look like in the future? And that only happens when you slow down and you settle and you reflect on the past, the present, and where you want to go. Very important. Important. So let me finish with this. The future isn't something you wait for, it's something you remember into existence. Yeah, very important. I'm going to say this again. The future isn't something you wait for, it's something you remember into existence. Make it vivid, make it emotional, make it yours. Hey, thanks for joining me here on the Return of Life podcast. My name is Randy Dyck. I would love for you to subscribe and share what you got out of this session. And if there's anything I can help you with, please reach out to me in the comments, and I'd love to serve and help you. Thanks for joining me here on the Return of Life podcast.